Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Patterson, in Chairman Cicilline's introduction of you, he referenced your master's in public health, and so I want to ask a question about public health. Is there a different chemical composition for vaccines in white neighborhoods as opposed to non-white neighborhoods?
Yes, so my master's in public health does not mean that I have in any way had any access to be able to examine the different compositions of different vaccines that are provided in different neighborhoods. So,
do you have any basis to believe that the vaccines being administered in white neighborhoods versus non-white neighborhoods are different?
I don't have any basis to even begin to evaluate that question because, again, I don't have access to the data, samples, or anything like that.
What about the batching process? Is there something called a white batch of vaccines as opposed to a batch of vaccines that would be intended for non-white people?
Not that I've heard of.
Not that you've heard of. It's interesting. I found a tweet of yours from December 3rd, almost a year ago today, 2020, where you tweeted, "My COVID-19 vaccination plan, go to the whitest neighborhood I can find to make sure my dose comes from a white batch." How should we think about that tweet?
As the humor that it was intended, albeit kind of a dark humor in terms of the reality of the Tuskegee experiments and so forth in our community. And so there was a whole string of commentary that we had following from that about how it was a shame that we even have to think in these types of terms. So that's where—
Well, it would seemingly be more of a shame if we thought in these terms without a basis. And I understand people, put things on Twitter sometimes that are jokes. And I noted in response to your tweet, an account called Urban Dashboard replied, "You have a great sense of humor, but too painful to laugh at that joke." And then you replied, "I know, it's all too painful all day, every day. And as I said, I was barely joking because it's real!" Exclamation point.
Yes, the situation.
So is it real that there's different, because you talked about a white batch, are white batches real?
As I said before, that the reference was putting in context this larger conversation about the differential access to affordable and quality healthcare in our communities.
No,
so it shouldn't be taken literally.
Oh, it shouldn't be taken literally. Okay, well, I guess my question is, you gave testimony today about your concern over the monopolistic sharing of information, about the criticality of the input of public interest groups, about how we have to stop the politicization of agency decisions. Do you think it damages public health, and do you think it damages the credibility of public interest groups like yours when you put out that your personal vaccination plan is to go to the whitest neighborhood so that you can ensure that your dose comes from the whitest batch?
Absolutely not. Because
you don't think that's dangerous? Is that misinformation? So how do I know if a batch is a white batch? If I wanted to follow your vaccination plan and I wanted one from the white batch too, where would I go?
Again, you're being facetious, and I've already responded to the question, and so I'm not going to respond to it again because there's not new information to provide.
Well, do you think that being facetious about race-based vaccination issues is dangerous? Because we have seen data that there are communities of color that are more skeptical of vaccines, and do you think that facetious comments like this are helpful?
So I think that they're important to raise a dialogue about why it is that people are more skeptical. I think it's important to raise the dialogue about how we can.
I only have a few moments left.
You're interrupting me.
Yeah, I'm interrupting you because I don't have a few seconds left.
No, you're asking me a question.
What's the most important part of the dialogue to understand from a white batch?
I think it's not really a legitimate seeking of information when you're breaking in when I'm actually responding to the question.
It's always legitimate to ask witnesses before the committee about their own
But it's not legitimate to interrupt when someone is trying to answer the question.
Do you regret this tweet? Since it seems to be causing some consternation, do you regret having sent it?
No. because it's causing consternation with you. It caused an interesting and important dialogue that is not one that I'm the only one having, that a number of us are having
I
in
think
our
that
community.
sometimes that dialogue can metastasize into disinformation and can actually harm the people that you say you're here to help. My time's up.
No, it actually acknowledges the reality of what we all face.
But there's no reality of a white badge. That's just
The
something
time
you
of the
made up.
gentleman has expired.